Maybe it was a private account Rita had put under the city's name so she could buy and sell horses without the IRS catching on? But, on closer inspection, Kathy realized she was wrong. This wasn't a city account. It was a private account. Rita's. She didn't know it, but everything was about to change. For her, for Dixon, and for me. Rita Crundwell had been tiptoeing and then stomping around my psyche since April 2012, when I opened the Chicago Tribune and a headline blasted out, "Dixon Comptroller accused of stealing $30 million from city coffers." That was before they realized it was more like $53 million. My heart jumped. How did a woman with a high school education pull off the largest city government fraud in U.S. history? How did she steal over $37,000 a day from a town with an annual budget of $6 million? Rita was raised in Dixon, began working for the city right out of high school, and had no family wealth to speak of. How did her coworkers believe she financed such a luxurious lifestyle? And how did the city's auditor, a top 10 national accounting firm, miss all the evidence that fraud was occurring? It was my kind of story. I've been fascinated with fraud ever since I was a graduate student at Virginia Tech, where I earned my PhD in accounting. Part of my interest had to do with my father, Dr. Tyronza R. Richmond. He was the chancellor of North Carolina Central University in Durham from 1986 until 1991, and he was forced to resign when one of his employees was caught embezzling money. My father had nothing to do with it, but he took the rap. The specter of that debacle loomed over him for the rest of his life, and I guess mine too. I teach forensic accounting at DePaul University in Chicago and research white-collar crime. For the last 10 years, I've been traveling the country and have talked with countless whistleblowers, victims, and offenders, inviting them to my classes. All of these cases, from my former colleague who went to prison for mortgage fraud, to the unsuspecting soccer mom who stole millions from her employer, to the reformed cybercriminal who showed me how to access the dark web, to the college counselor who blew the whistle on one of the largest academic fraud cases and was shunned by many, have shaped my thinking. All of these cases have impacted my views on how far people will push the envelope in any number of ways. Their stories are fascinating, scary, and also quite relatable. I want my students to get to know these people in the flesh. I want them to see themselves reflected in the fraud dilemmas. Because when you can imagine these issues happening to you, your judgment about the person facing the dilemma can change. As I look back on the perpetrators, whistleblowers, and victims I've met over the years, I realize that every perp was different, every victim was different, and every whistleblower was different. Despite people lumping them all together, they're not the same. The only things they had in common were that they'd committed a crime, reported a crime, or were victims of a crime. But the reasons behind how they got there and why differed significantly. Some came from well-off families, while others never graduated from high school. Some were serial offenders, while others suffered lapses in judgment. Some people were simply minding their own business and were victimized, while some corporations had weak internal controls and became easy targets. So I devised categories to distinguish one from another, and also to help me figure out my own feelings toward each one. Why was I angry at one kind of perp, but more forgiving of another? Why did one type of victim elicit pity in me, and the other elicit condemnation? I'm fixated on how people cheat, and even more by how they rationalize it. The media often focused on what happened in Dixon, but rarely discussed